All right, what's up, everybody? Just coming at you here with a video about the new Tomb Raider 1-3 remaster that just came out this week. Been playing it a little bit, been spending some time with it. I'm about halfway through Tomb Raider 1 and have taken decent chunks out of Tomb Raider 2 and 3, the first kind of areas on those, and I thought I'd drop a video about how I'm feeling about it. I've been vocal about Tomb Raider on this channel, so yeah, I got a video you can find on the channel about how to play the game and enjoy them in the modern era. And now that we have these new remasters, do they fix any of that? Is it good or bad? And you know what? Kind of both. Like, it's a very hard question for me to answer because in one way, like, these games are so good that I'll always play them. They're kind of forever games for me. Like, I can always just hop in and play a level or two and have a good time, no matter how many times I've done that. Because once you start getting past the puzzle aspect of the game, you start getting into the joy of speed running and beating your times and doing efficiency runs and everything like that. Or, you know, seeing if you remember the optimal path. Same kind of way I play like Mega Man X is just not even necessarily like I have really fast times, but just my own personal joy of playing the games really well is super enjoyable. So I'll always play these. So the remasters are both really good to me, but also kind of bad in ways that they just didn't go the length they should have for the games. So I'll get into that a little bit here. We'll talk about the gameplay, the controls, the graphics, all the updates made to those. But you know, we have to kind of address a lot of the discourse even before these remasters is like people online saying that the classic Tomb Raider games are just basically unplayable. So I want to talk about that a little bit. I talked about it in my previous video from over a year ago, and I'll kind of reiterate it here. Like, these games are old. You know, this is a remaster of Tomb Raider 1-3, and I think essentially those are kind of the best ones of this old style of game. But they are old. The gameplay is 100% dated, and you know, some people cite the controls, some people cite the blocky platforming aspect of the game. Other people say the combat is completely unplayable because, you know, the gunplay and movement and everything during combat is, we don't do that anymore. We have much more sensible combat, and all of those things are true, but that didn't stop millions of people from enjoying it back in the day. I'm sure it did stop a good chunk of people from enjoying it in the 90s, but many more people love these games. And you know, you wouldn't have Lara Croft still here today being with new entries. You wouldn't have had 5 games back then if they weren't good to some degree, because a lot of people will say, oh, it's just because Lara, the character, is what made the game so popular. But we saw lots of other games in that era that delved into the hot chick heroine aspect and just died, never came back after 1 or 2 entries. And Lara's still around, so something's working about the Tomb Raider franchise. So yeah, gameplay is dated, gameplay is bad by people's standards today. But I kind of equate it to this, like when I was learning how to drive when I was a kid, 15 years old, my dad was also teaching me how to drive a manual transmission, and you know, I was doing all right. I was figuring it out, but I told him, I was like, you know, it's with all the things you're doing while you're learning to drive, you're keeping your eye out for everybody else, you're learning all these rules or whatever, having to also have operating the manual transition in the back of your mind at all the times, like, I have to now think about this as well, was really annoying. And like with my regular car, I just drove. I had an Astro van. With my car, I just drove it. You just push the pedal, it goes. You push the brake, it stops, right? No big deal. You turn the wheel to turn the car. And with manual, you had to do all these extra steps to get going, to stop, to do everything you wanted to do, right? And my dad replied to me, he said, I don't think about driving a manual. This was just the way cars were when he was a kid. And so he doesn't have to mentally press in the clutch and shift the car or whatever. He just does it instinctively because he's done it so much. And I think that's when it comes to like Tomb Raider and Resident Evil games and all of these older games where people really harp on the controls. I think there's a difference between games that have imprecise or like bad controls where no matter, even if they got an update or something, the physics and jankiness of the games would be at play here. And that's not the case with Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider is very precise in how it controls. It's that the controls themselves are goofy. But for those of us who have lived that life of those 90s first era 3D games with tank controls and just weird, clunky, like developers were still figuring it out, right? For those of us who have played those, we don't think about it. It's like that manual transmission of you do it enough and it just seeps back into your consciousness. And so my other video detailed ways to kind of help with that, how to deal with those controls, but I don't really see it as an issue. But with that said, they did try and put a modern control scheme in these remakes or remasters, and it's not that great, but we'll address that later. But another thing that people say about the the platforming, the blockiness of the game, it really lends itself to that the puzzles in Tomb Raider is the platforming. That is the thing you need to solve. You need to look at gaps and say, can I cross that gap with her jumping capabilities, with her grab, with, or sometimes if you want to get up to a ledge and you can't make the jump on just a standing jump, you can jump backwards onto an incline and bound off of that and then grab the ledge upon you. So you're always making these calculations, looking at everything around you, assessing the area, and solving the platforming. And it's very different than, say, like the Uncharted games with like yellow paint on handholds, and Uncharted games feel very automated to me in a lot of ways, like almost like the platforming is boring. And when I fail platforming in an Uncharted game, like Uncharted 4, love the game to death, amazing in so many ways, but when I fail platforming in that game, it's almost always because like some kind of bug or like something weird happened, not because my skill level as a player was lacking, or I didn't execute a like crazy hard maneuver precisely. It's because something like it's so automated that when you fail platforming in those games, something else happened, not your gameplay skills as a player. In Tomb Raider, it's very much about the precision of your timing, your button presses, etc. So that's very different. People will find the kind of gung-ho nature of platforming in these older games maybe to be off-putting, because you will have deaths, you will have failures quite often. So yeah, the thing I will say is that even as somebody who loves these games, I don't love the combat. It's there, it's a thing I have to deal with. There aren't fights where I'm like, yay, that fight was fun, right? You just you gotta power through it. But luckily, that's not why I play them, and that's not why I love them. So, something you'll hear as the benefits of these games, the positive of these games, which goes back to the original. So I won't talk about this too much because we're more so talking about the remasters here. But I love the immersion of these games, the isolation. It's interesting because you say, oh, it's just nostalgia, or you're just into the hot character or whatever. When I was a kid, like, it's the same feeling from Metroid. And as a kid, I didn't know that Samus was a girl. I didn't play that. I played Super Metroid first. And so Tomb Raider games gave me that same feeling of like just one person against a hostile, harsh environment, all alone, solving it by themselves. And, so that was what I always found that I loved about the games and why they stuck with me over other games that, again, just had the hot girl on the cover, right? Tomb Raider always was great, and they genuinely, like, story-wise, they just have these like bonkers 90s 80s adventure stories where you're supposed to be an archaeologist, but you're not really dusting off tablets or translating texts or anything. You're 100% like a comic book superhero character, or like just that typical Arnold Schwarzenegger hero character in whatever 500 movies he was in back then, where he's like blasting his way through all of his problems. That's who Lara is as well. She's not a particularly good archaeologist. But what I will say that I love about these classic games, if you played the modern Tomb Raider games, they're pretty good, right? But when you play the classic Tomb Raider games, you're playing a like character who she's at the end of her road. She's at the height of her skill level. She is an experienced veteran adventurer. And there isn't this like, with the new Tomb Raider remakes, it was interesting, the Tomb Raider like survival game, the first one. She was kind of like getting her bearings. Okay, yeah, I get it. She's learning. This is her very first adventure, right? And then the second game, Rise of the Tomb Raider, she's better at it. She's got skills under her belt. She's a survivor now, and then literally she's being tricked by everybody in her family and by the enemy, and so even though she's experienced in adventuring, she's still gullible and kind of stupid. And I was like, okay, well, maybe she has some interpersonal growth to do now or something. So that was that. And then Shadow of the Tomb Raider comes out, and like, spoiler alert, maybe on a game that's over 5 years old now, but like in the first level, she makes a giant error in her archaeological judgment that starts the end of the world. And I was just like, okay, wait, she's still an idiot. She's still incompetent. She's still terrible. Like, I like these games, and I want to like new Lara. I want to see her step into her role as the character we know and love, but she's just kind of an idiot, right? And so, everybody will cite like, oh, you just want classic Lara back because of her character design, her assets or whatever. And it's like, no, I legitimately love playing as the badass, the one who has all the answers up front. When you look at the first scene of like, she comes up against Larson at the end of the first stretch of the first game, and like they have this guns drawn standoff, and he reaches for his weapon and she just like drop kicks him right there. And the way she talks to him, she goads information out of him. She's cunning both when it comes to her mind and her physical capabilities, and that's great. I love that about Lara. And so hopefully when they make new games, we'll see more of that as well. And that's why these old ones are great to experience if you're up for dealing with some of the old school drawbacks, right? So let's talk about the two main things that get updated in this game. First off is the controls, and this is where I say they did a bad job in the remaster. The modern controls are effectively not usable, in my professional opinion. I've looked at some other video creators' guides on how to better use the modern controls, and I've practiced with them, and I've tried and tried and tried, and I cannot get over the fact that they're just objectively worse in a lot of situations in order to solve the platforming equation in front of you. There's things you can do to get around the places where the modern controls are bad, but it's just not worth it in any respect. And I'll outline a couple of reasons why. Lara doesn't get her back hop with modern controls. You just turn around and run backwards, right? She doesn't get sidestepping the way you would expect, where she can slightly step to her side. If she needs to pull a trigger and you're not perfectly lined up with it, if you're using modern controls, she'll kind of weirdly walk around it and still not be lined up with it, and it creates these weird issues. And then also, the one area where I think modern controls should be better in my head would be with combat. So with the way combat works, because you're using tank controls, if you want to dodge somebody in classic controls, you can't really do that. You have to like side jump backwards, do a roll around them or something, but you're probably going to take some sort of damage because dodging is just not effectively a thing. So combat is really goofy with old controls. And so I was thinking, if I could just run sideways, that's huge. And modern controls let you just run sideways. Great. But the other thing that happens is when you're in combat, Lara pulls her guns, the camera and her lock onto an enemy, the camera follows that enemy. Now, in order for you to be moving her with your analog stick with modern controls in a way that doesn't have her janking back and forth with the shifting camera. So let's say I'm aiming at a target and he takes a left and my camera takes a left. I'm now taking a left with my camera unless I adjust. Like I want to go this way, the camera goes this way, and the camera pulls Lara with her with the modern controls. Unless I instinctively shift the analog, I effectively have to predictively move my analog stick, and it just doesn't work, right? So there's a clip I can throw in here of me just getting trounced in a fight because I'm like running into a wall, unable to control Lara in any satisfying way. And then on classic controls, I just deal with the fight the way I normally do. I keep my distance, I pace myself, I hop around like an idiot, but I still do it, right? And so the controls, it's really a missed opportunity, and I can't help but think it's objectively worse than the classic controls, which who would have even thought that was possible? But here we are. And furthermore, those frustrations I'm experiencing with like the camera work and the movement, just the pratfalls and the mistakes you can make with modern controls, I think it's actively a worse way to introduce people to the game. I think they're potentially more frustrating than operating tank controls. And I don't understand how a studio that's working on remastering these games didn't see that coming, or didn't have some creative solutions on this front, because that's like, with my previous job, solving like usability issues for people, that was like my number one thing. That would be like, I would boot this up in testing at this company and be like, this is not good. What are we doing here, guys? We got to do something else right away. So I don't know if there's some like magic brain unlock that somebody can do to make this work, or that this company Aspire, whatever it's called, like had in their heads of like, oh, this is great. It's not working for me at all. So I'm playing in classic control mode 100%. And I think the like disappointing part is there is like a model for an easy win on this one, and it's the recent remake, Resident Evil 1 remake games that were this is very confusing to say, but they were re-released on modern systems, and with that came like an HD upscale and a control remaster as well, to where they put new like dynamic, just turn a circle wherever you like. You can run in a circle like this super easily. They put that on the analog stick, and they put the classic tank controls on the D-pad, right? And I think that would be huge for Tomb Raider. I'd say the vast majority of people playing Tomb Raider games did not have an analog stick when they were playing Tomb Raider 1 through 3. I think that Last Revelation, the fourth game, was the first one to integrate analog stick controls. I might be wrong about that. Maybe 3 did. But I know for sure when I played my first Tomb Raider game, analog wasn't even a thought in any of our minds except for the Nintendo 64, which the analog stick on that sucked. But with that said, like, there's a lot of easy wins. There's no flare button on Tomb Raider 1, or no, Tomb Raider 1 didn't even have flares. There's no flare button on Tomb Raider 2 or 3, which you've got the addition of like the R3 click, the L3 click. You've got just different ways in which these buttons could be remastered we don't really need a look button per se anymore if you could just control the camera with the right stick, but there still is a look button. And because the camera's bad, the look button is still plenty useful in a lot of ways. So there's that. So it's just a lot of things where like there's some very easy wins they could have done to make these controls work and not even need a separation of old and new. You could certainly select the old if you wanted to, but I'd say they missed the chance to make this the definitive way to play the game, because like I said, with that combat situation, if in these open areas I'm in, I would definitely just tap over to the analog stick and run freeform, to strafe and use that space wisely. But in this case, you can't really do that. So, yeah. And also, I think that with Tomb Raider 1 and 2, they could have just left the dash and the crouch ability from Tomb Raider 3 in those games. I think they could have just given... this might be a bone of contention because this is a big change, but like just give Lara infinite flares and let her just tap a button to like turn a flare on and off on her belt like the modern games do. huge change. Maybe have an option to turn it off, but some of these games just, they're so dependent on the flare that like certain areas are so dark that you're popping a flare all the time and you're managing it as a resource, and it's like being able to see what I'm doing is not like a luxury. It's just a quality of life thing. Like, and I'll get into how dark these games are at times. But there's a lot of easy wins that I would put into like a modern updated game that they just didn't do when it comes to controls and usability and everything. So that's disappointing to me, and that kind of deflates a little bit of the value of what I would see in a remaster. But that kind of brings us to graphics. Now, what is the remaster happening here? Basically, it's a one-to-one like HD upscale of textures, graphics, and everything, and it's nothing mind-blowing. Like, it's not even close to modern graphics of anything you'll see out there, like especially the modern Tomb Raider games. It's basically they're taking all of the geometry and giving it a little bit of an up-res. So in a lot of ways, it seems like they redid all of the graphics by hand. You'll see some murals in the game that look stunningly good, but then when you see them just plastered on this flat, blocky surface, you know, that immersion level is certainly broken. But, you know, I like it. I'm not a stickler for graphics. I like the crispness and the, you know, there's a lot of situations where a situation became easier for me because I could just see what I'm looking at much more clearly than the old Tomb Raider games. Now, I've played these games a million times, but I even noticed in the St. Francis Folly level, I was like, oh, I can just see everything so much easier. There's no like fog of war going on with the draw distance, and so I can see the whole level and I can just digest the whole thing and be like, all right, cool, I know exactly where I'm going. Now, I have that place memorized, and still just the ability to see things made me beat that level probably faster than I ever had coming back from a, you know, a hiatus, right? So that's good. That's great. So you'll notice a lot of chunkiness. I'll say basically the graphics level is like the PS3 version of Tomb Raider Anniversary, a game like that's nearly 20 years old at this point, which is ridiculous to think about. But it was a remake of Tomb Raider 1 that they put out on Xbox 360, PS3, and your graphics level is going to be somewhat akin to that, and probably a lot worse in some situations, because what they have is the ability to just dynamically toggle between the original game and the new one, or the new graphics. And what I'll say is there's a lot of nice little touches they do with, it's not just like a straight like upscale of the graphics they had. They redid the graphics, like the textures on the walls, and that's nice. They added like skylights and snow falling and different things and certain areas to kind of up that immersion level. The Colosseum level in Tomb Raider 1, which like you're sitting in this dark void, barely able to see the other edge of the Colosseum, you can now tell that you're outside. There's clouds, there's sunlight. There's a reason why this place is like inexplicably brightly lit in the middle of the night from Tomb Raider 1. And so there's lots of nice little touches like that. Now, what I will say is with them updating the lighting, there's lots of areas where the new updated graphics are really dark for like, I guess, understandable reasons, because you'll be like way back in a cave where, yes, there is no light that gets back there, but still, it's like, I can't play this. And there isn't like a brightness gamma setting that you can toggle. So that's a problem for me. And if I find myself like toggling to the old graphics just to see what I can see. And I have some clips of that here I'll show you, but it's really interesting. And I think definitely a miss in some ways. Another place where just having that like free flare toggle would be wonderful, to just hit a button and say, all right, turn my flashlight on, turn my flare on, whatever, just so I can see where I'm going and not step on a patch of spikes or something. That me knowing the levels, I know the spikes are there, but if anybody new is playing this game and they're just running and immediately shredded by spikes that you can't even see, like that's an issue, right? And that's definitely a disappointment of mine. But yeah, maybe there's a fix for that coming. Maybe there's a brightness toggle. Who knows? So I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. It'd be nice to just not need the old graphics whatsoever, but I find them as like almost like a tool in my tool chest now of like, all right, I'm looking at the new version level, but what did the old one look like? Okay, great. Now I see. So yeah, that's kind of a problem. So overall, like I'm positive on the graphics. It's also cool, like little things they did where in the cutscenes they actually have moving mouths now that match the dialogue, and the game has subtitles. There are scenes where I had no clue what the heck people were saying.
Somehow, you don't behave like you got the monk's blood.
I understand that somehow is in my favor, so indulge me about the dagger. I'd be indebted with your life.
These doors are waiting for the right one, the right time to arrive, and then the dagger's blade will honor the hearts of those who believe. So unless you pledge your loyalty as well.
And which one is that?
To the sins and fortunes of Marco Bartoli.
Back as a kid, like there's a scene with an Italian guy that I literally had no idea what they were saying in the original because there were no subtitles. So now I know, and it's cool to understand it a little bit more. You can now tell what people are saying. But yeah, still I think they could have done a little bit more, but I'm pleasantly surprised by how much they did do. I think they went beyond just the upscale route. There's foliage, there's lighting, there's cool things added, there's context clues for there's an area in Tomb Raider 2 where you'll just be swarmed by spiders in the original. And in the remakes graphics, the remaster graphics, they put spider webs all over the area to kind of give you that hint of like you're running into a spider den here. So that's cool. I like that they did stuff like that. So, I'd say it's 50-50. Probably could have gone further, but they did what they could. Probably on a incredibly low budget and just like a crank these games out mindset. So, we'll see. And I'll also say that there's not necessarily enough new features for me in the games overall. Like, I'll point out the PS1 games had level select, that once you beat a level and saved after that point, you now have that previous level as part of a level select feature. And that really comes down to the memory card memory limitations. They didn't want you to have to like juggle multiple save files in case you got stuck or whatever like you do on PC. So they're just like, all right, you can have one campaign you're running through, and if you get stuck or screw up, well, at least you can go back 1 or 2 levels if you need to gather additional resources or redo something, or you missed a gun, whatever it is. They gave you that olive branch. But when you're all done with the game, it's cool because you can select any level you want and do like time attack runs, or do a new record, or just sit down for 15 minutes and crush a level that you particularly liked. I enjoy that. And that isn't in the PC version. And so they went with the PC version saving system on these games, which is a little disappointing to me. I would love a time attack mode for levels added, place where you can catalog your runs and see if you can beat them. And just a place where, people can see online that maybe even like an online leaderboard, probably asking too much, but I think that'd be cool. I think saves are still an issue. It becomes more and more an issue as you get to Tomb Raider 3. Tomb Raider 3 is a game known for like a lot of pratfalls and like just here's spikes. Have fun with those spikes just sitting down there that you can't see or don't know about at all. A lot of like extra boulders, extra things just waiting to instantly kill you in Tomb Raider 3, more so than the previous 2 in my opinion. So that leads you to a situation where like in Tomb Raider 3, you're wanting to save often because you're afraid of what's around the corner as you're progressing in the game. Every time you accomplish something substantial, you're like, okay, I'm going to save again. Whereas if the new modern one, had like a 1 minute or 3 minute rewind feature, or auto saves or like checkpoints in the level or something, I think that'd work a lot better, because then you wouldn't be living with that constant anxiety. You wouldn't be dipping into your menu to save every 3-5 minutes out of fear of what happens if I don't. You could just play the game, truck along, and if you never die, you never need to use it, fine, great. But if you slip up or press a button wrong and instantly get murdered by piranhas, then it's not that big a deal. You don't lose 20 minutes of gameplay or get kicked back to the beginning of the level, right? That's easy. I think that's something they could have done. They didn't do it. Tomb Raider 3 has collectible crystals in the remaster, and what these were in the PS1 game, they were save crystals, because again, memory limitations on the memory cards of the PS1. And on PC, they were health drops. They would refill, I think, half your health when you got them. And the PC version, they'd even put them in areas where there were like a gauntlet of enemies or a fall that would like naturally chunk a piece of your health to say, okay, you survived that thing, we'll give you a health boost to get you back. And you don't have to use your health packs on your own, right? And so in the remasters here, they're neither one of those. They're not save points, they're not checkpoints like they were in old Tomb Raider or whatever, which would have been nice. Go up to the crystal, hit it, that's your checkpoint. But no, that's not what they are. They're just collectibles. I have no reason. I don't know why, but like maybe it's an achievement-based thing, trophy-based thing, whatever. Not terribly interesting to me. I like them better when they are the health pickups. And then things like costume select. So easy to put it in the game to swap it. Even when you're doing like the photo mode, which the game, yes, it has a photo mode, cool. You can just swap costumes on the fly, and it's like, what if in Nepal, where Lara's in Tomb Raider 1, running around in the snow in her booty shorts, like, could we put the Tomb Raider 3 Antarctica outfit on her in this level, give her snow pants and a puffy jacket so she can stay warm? That'd make a lot of sense, right? And so I would like that. It'd be cool to have a costume select, or even make some new costumes, make some new content to unlock. So there's a lot of places where like this remaster feels super bare bones. Could have had a lot of features, could have done things to make this the definitive version of the game to play. If you want to just have it on Nintendo Switch, you want to play with the updated graphics but use the old controls, you want to save the old way, blah blah blah, it might be the definitive version of the game for you to play if you can't pass some of the lighting issues I outlined. But overall, I was hoping for more. Now, the flip side of that is I got this on sale for Steam for $24, right? And the old Tomb Raider games, you can find them for $1, $2 on Steam, So I'm guessing over time, the price on this is going to come down to $10, $20. And it'll get to the point where, this is going to be the best way to pick up the games because it's cheap. It's a remaster. It gives the option of both versions of the graphics. Gives you the option to play it on Switch, on a modern console. Great. Wonderful. So I'm kind of torn. Is it good? Yes. It's good that it's preserved. It's playable on more devices now. It's got some updated graphics. You can read the dialogue happening instead of wondering what the hell they're talking about. You can see more stuff. It's got widescreen support now, lots of little things that make it great to have. But at the same time, I think they could have gone way further. The modern controls are trash. There's issues with some of the lighting and things, so it's sad for me that it's a mixed bag, because these are some of my favorite games of all time. And it's like, I just want to get in there and be like, oh, just fix this, just patch this. Maybe people will create mods for it. Maybe they'll focus their modding energy more on the usability and features of the game that they could mod in, instead of, you all know what people are gonna create mods for with Lara Croft. Let's not focus on that first. A couple years from now, make all the Lara mods you want. But right now, let's see if the modders can fix some of these weird issues here. So that's my take on it. If you feel the same, let me know in the comments. If you wanted more from this like me, let me know. If you love it, let me know. If you hate it, let me know. I welcome any I love to chat about these games. I play them over and over. I probably play through Tomb Raider 1 through 3 once a year, once every 2 years. I probably slam random levels for it every few months. Just, it's like an arcade game for me. I'll flip it on and have a blast. So yeah, love them. If you don't want to drop the 25, 30 bucks on this, check out the $1 to $2 versions on Steam to give it a try. See if you can handle the tank controls. You know, that's definitely, you know, less than a cookie. You can figure out if this is going to be your cup of tea or not with some of the older versions of the same game. And yeah, I love them. I think they're incredibly entertaining. If classic gameplay, classic stories, old school stuff is your cup of tea, they're great. There's a reason they sold millions back in the day. There's a reason everybody loved them beyond just Lara and the spectacle of it. So yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Check out other videos. Check out podcasts. Check out literally anything we want to do. If you like this video, let me know. Peace out. Have a good one. Love you.